Alright, so this short video is going to show you how to utilize the KVCC library databases. So it's my understanding and my expectation that you have some familiarity doing this because you have taken English 101 and or taken other classes that have required research. It's likely that you've been in classes where the reference librarians have actually come and provided a sort of face-to-face tutorial about this. So I'm going to be relatively brief, but I'm going to try to show you some of the options and functions that may prove helpful to you as you work through this class. So the best place to access the library's resources is from the main page of the KVCC website, kvcc.me.edu. Once you get there, under quick links, you'll see that there's a link for the library. You can go ahead and click that. And once you get here, you'll see a variety of different things. The first is the search bar. Within the last 18 months or so, the college has implemented one search feature, which allows you to search all of KVCC's various library holdings and collections with one quick search, which is really helpful. It searches everything that we have so that you don't have to individually go through each one of the databases and reference spots to look. That's really helpful. The other thing that's really helpful on this page is the librarian schedules. So there may come a time when you need a little bit of extra support. Certainly you can come to me first, but if for some reason I'm not available or our schedules don't line up or whatever, it's really helpful to go spend some time working with Barbara and or Steven. They know these databases and they know how to find information very well, and they will be very supportive of you in that effort. One thing I always like to point out is that by virtue of the fact that you are a KVCC student, that means you have access to not only what we have at the college, but also what a much larger network of libraries has at their disposal. That includes all of the other state universities and colleges. That includes Colby, Bates, Bowdoin, and all of the public libraries throughout the state. So chances are, if you need it, we can get our hands on it. Usually that takes the form of an interlibrary loan where we request that document or that book or that resource from another college. Generally speaking, it takes a few days, but it's well worth your time if there's something that you really want to get your hands on. One scenario where that becomes very helpful is when there is a journal that we do not have a subscription to. So one of the things that folks sometimes don't know about the college is that we have to pay pretty exorbitant subscription fees to have access to all of this information. And so we tend to not subscribe to things and pay for things that we are not likely to use. So you will find plenty of things relevant to nursing and medical assisting and occupational therapy and physical therapy and all of those types of fields. But if there's a field that you're interested in that we do not have a degree program in, there is a chance that we may not have access to their journals. For instance, let's just say that you are interested in turf grass management or agronomy. We do not have those programs here at KVCC, and we do not have many students who need to access that information. Therefore, we don't pay for it. However, some of the other schools in the state do have similar programs and likely have subscriptions to that information. This is all to say that if we don't have it at KVCC, that does not mean that we cannot access it. It just takes a little bit more time and a little bit of coordination with other libraries. So those are certainly times when we can lean on Barbara and Steven to help us out. So with that being said, and without any further ado, let's just walk through this really quickly. One of the things that you'll want to know, especially if you're accessing these resources off campus, is that sometimes you'll be prompted for a password. It's always important to click on the password button here and to take a look at what is available to you here. You'll notice that the passwords are generally listed in italics within parentheses, and you'll need those sometimes, again, when you access stuff off campus. So let's go back here and let's use this one search feature in the same way that we did with Google Scholar. So we will have an opportunity here to do a search. Let's do heart disease in quotation marks to preserve it as a phrasal search, and we'll stitch it together with wine, meaning that our search will have to have both of those things true to come back as a positive search. We'll click search, and the powerful computer algorithms will go and search all of the available resources. So you'll see here there are about 2,500 returns, and this is searching a wide array of publications, basically everything that we can get our hands on here at the college. That includes not only academic journals and trade publications, which are really written for an audience of experts and practitioners, but also things that are written for the general public. So that will include things like magazines and newspapers. So in the same way that we have the opportunity to sort of narrow our search with Google Scholar, we have that same opportunity with the library databases. The first thing that we're going to want to always make sure that we're doing is looking for full text, because if we don't tell the database that we want full text, it will bring back things that are called stubs, which are basically bibliographic entries that are not attached to a particular full text. And the other thing we're going to want to do in this class, for the most part, is we're going to work with scholarly or peer-reviewed journals, and that is so that we don't get things from a wide array of publications. In fact, when I did this earlier, I got a return from Good Housekeeping, which is a great publication, but really doesn't rise to the standards that we're looking for in this class. And the other thing that we're going to do is we are going to limit our search to the relative near past. So we're going to look from about 2013 to 2017, so basically the last 4 or 5 years. And you're going to see that that took our search from about 2,500 returns to about 87, which is very, very helpful. And it's going to give us a much greater chance of finding stuff that we are going to find useful. And you'll see that most of these have direct correlation or direct relevance to what we're looking for. So some of them are about alcohol in general and heart disease and diabetes. This article in particular stood out to me earlier when I was preparing to do this lecture. And this one is the mechanism by which moderate alcohol consumption influences coronary heart disease. So that looks pretty good. It's from the Nutrition Journal, which is a journal that we actually saw when we were looking in Google Scholar. So this one looks like it meets a lot of our criteria. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And I'm going to click on the PDF full text button here, and that should bring me to a window that shows me the full text of the article. And so then I can have an opportunity, per usual, to take a look at the abstract and see if it's something that's going to match my needs. And then I'm going to take a look at some other things here. I might look at their methods or their introduction to get some background information. But certainly what I might do is go down here and take a look at their Works Cited page. And you can see this is a review article, sort of a meta-analysis where they've taken a look at the sort of research that's available to them and sort of drawing conclusions based on that vast corpus of information. And they have 171 references, so 171 previous studies and articles that relate to this topic. And so you can see that that's sort of a treasure trove of information relevant to this topic if you were to, say, do a literature review or an annotated bibliography or to write a research paper about this topic. This is completely invaluable. Somebody else has sort of done the dirty work for you and found all of this information. So that's great. I want to show you a couple of other features here. So if we go back and instead of clicking on the full text link, we actually just click on the title of the article. It's going to bring us this. And this is actually a really, really helpful screen. One, because it gives you the abstract right here, so even before you click on and download the PDF version, you can get a sense for how useful it's going to be for you. You can also see how librarians and how these experts have categorized this, so you can look at the subject terms, and you can click on those, and it will actually bring you to more resources. So that's obviously very helpful. You can click on the authors to take a look at what other work they've published recently. And so it really gives you an interesting way to sort of see how this fits into the larger conversation and larger network about this particular topic. So those are great. Some more practical considerations. One of the things that I like to do when I'm doing research is, because sometimes we may not be able to recreate the exact search terms that we use, we may forget exactly how we got to that document. One of the things that I encourage folks to do is to email the resource to themselves. So if you click on this email button, it'll bring up this little form. You can fill this out, email it to yourself, and you can say wine and heart disease. That'll put that in the subject line, and you can send this to yourself, and what it'll do is it'll send you a permanent link to this resource so you can get directly back to it. That's a really great way to organize your research. It's pretty easy, and you have sort of a digital track record so that you can get back to it. The other thing that folks find very helpful here is this little cite button, which will be reminiscent of what we saw with Google Scholar. We can click that, and it'll bring up the APA reference for us, and we can just simply copy and paste that and throw that into our reference page or our Works Cited page. Okay, so that's sort of the basic functionality of these databases. One of the other things that you may find helpful, again, is to click on the advanced search feature here. And then again, we can go in and do some really close fine tuning. We can mess with our search terms. We can select journal titles that we want, so we can again say that we want something that has nutrition in the title. We can remind it that we want full text and scholarly journals. We can, limit it by publication date, and then we can do our search again, and you can see that it changes our search a little bit. So that's really helpful. One of the things that I want to tell you about research is that using the correct terminology or keywords or terms that are most likely associated with your topic, that's super important. And I'll illustrate that with a brief anecdote. I was helping a student a while back, and they were writing a paper for a psychology class about culture shock, which is various feelings of distress when somebody moves into or is brought into a new culture, and it can manifest itself in a number of ways. And it's a well-documented psychological issue, and it's been written about, and it manifests itself in a number of ways: depression, anxiety. There are many causes for it: language, food, work, family, etc. And there's a fairly large conversation about this because of the number of folks who invariably have to go to different cultures. Well, I was helping this student do a search in the databases, and we were searching for culture shock, and we were not getting many positive results. We weren't getting very far with it, and we were really struggling. So what we did was we actually backed out for a second out of the databases. We went onto the standard Google search engine, and we searched culture shock, and actually ended up on the Wikipedia page for culture shock. And we quickly learned that another term for it, perhaps a more scientific term or a term that's favored by people who actually research the topic, was acculturation stress. And once we started using that search term rather than using culture shock, which is kind of the layman's term or the vernacular, we were able to really start to find a lot of research about the topic, because that was the favored term in the literature. So that is to say, really know the various ways that a particular phenomenon or a particular topic is talked about, what keywords are associated with it, and sometimes you may have to play around with that. So, for instance, there are probably numerous terms that are associated with heart disease. There are probably various types of heart disease, various heart conditions. Heart disease is sort of a catch-all term, and we may want to look for those in particular, because that may provide a more fruitful path to information. So be really conscious of that, and if you have to, and in the third video I'll show you what this can look like, zoom out and do a more general search so that you know that you're using the favored terminology, because that can really prove to be helpful. So that's a basic overview of the library databases. And like I said in the Google Scholar video that I made for you folks, it can be really helpful sometimes if you find an article in Google Scholar that is a stub that you can't get a full text for, to bring that full text article title into these databases and look, because that will signal that we have actually the rights to that document or article, and we have paid the subscription, and generally speaking you'll be able to find the PDF full text. So I a lot of times I'll just copy and paste that title wholesale into the search bar, and I will likely find it. Sometimes I have to look by the publication title, but generally I can find it. So this is another resource that's rich with information for us, and I hope that you utilize it. The college pays good money to have access to these resources. They've already been vetted, and they've already been cataloged and categorized for us, so that again we can sort of follow the conversation that's taking place.